As it stands, Western LNG is the owner of the Xilisms terminal, and it would be built in Korea with Korean and Chinese steel. So how much taxpayer money are we prepared to invest in a project that is American-owned and foreign-built?
So Mark Carney's announced his latest round of projects, and it's got everyone buzzing, everyone talking, and well, a lot of conversations come around the Xilisms LNG project, which we'll touch on. But the one thing that's really kind of gotten the ire of many is the fact that there's an absence of a pipeline. No pipeline talked about, no pipeline discussed, which is really important if you want to keep Alberta on board. Because isn't that what the conversation has been lately? Can we keep Alberta as part of Canada? Can we make sure they try to persuade them to stay in and try to unify Canada? Well, Mark Carney doesn't really believe in unity, it seems like these days. And when pressed on the idea of, pipelines, he still gets squirrely. He even calls them boring almost. So we'll be touching on that and all the fallout around these project announcements and where does this really leave us as a country? That's what we'll be discussing this morning. Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Josh. If you're getting value from today's episode, take the time to like, share, and subscribe. It helps us to grow. It helps us get to new audiences and it helps people see that there's something different than what the mainstream media has to offer. And now let's get into our first story, shall we? Big announcements dropped in yesterday. And around a lot of the Xilisms project, because there's a lot of infrastructure and logistics around it that has Canadians kind of like, elbows up. I thought we hated America. I thought we were going to use Canadian industry to build our projects, but we're not getting that. And Mark Carney gets pressed on that with this specific LNG project. And oh, baby, it's about exactly what you thought it was going to be.
Can we have the last question? Sure. Sorry.
Kind of gathered from Dogwood News, following up on this question. So, as it stands, Western LNG is the owner of the Xilisms terminal, and it would be built in Korea with Korean and Chinese steel. So, how much taxpayer money are we prepared to invest in a project that is American-owned and foreign-built?
There are different aspects of the project, as I said. There is the PRGT pipeline, which is necessary, which is Canadian owned. First Nation. Sorry, can I finish? There is the associated transmission line that comes there. There are structures that come with projects that ensure that there is returns to taxpayers through the tax system as well. And the structure of the financing is a decision that we take with the full information of the project design. So that's part of, we answer that question with full information by doing the work, and that's what the referral to the major project office facilitates.
Huh? What did you just say? So didn't answer the question, talked about the project's office and says, no, we're going to take up the whole scope of issues and we'll think about it. Yeah, so didn't answer the question well at all. Is taxpayer money going to be sunk into this project for it only be built with Chinese steel in Korea and American owned? Is that what we're going to be doing here? Well, there's aspects of the project that could be Canadian built, might be Canadian built. We might have Canadian jobs. We'll see. We'll see. Here's the things, folks. This is what you need to know, and this one thing you should always be weary of. When you have a man who is a self-proclaimed globalist masquerading as a nationalist for an election, guess what's going to happen? He's going to use his globalist connections and use his globalist ideology to get things built in this country that also pad the pockets of his globalist partners. That is what we're witnessing. I also urge you, if you haven't watched it already, go watch David Moose on the Loose's video from this morning. I'll link it right here. He breaks into all of this because this is exactly what is happening here. So what do globalists do? Well, they find the way to do things for the cheapest way they can do it. Right now, the cheapest way to do it is not using Canadian labor, not using Canadian material. Use Chinese steel, have it built in Korea, and we'll ship it over to the BC coast. Oh, we might build a pipeline with Canadian steel, maybe at some point. That's what we are currently witnessing. And this is really the frustration with it all, isn't it? Is the fact that this was the crown jewel of the latest announcement, the expansion and building of this LNG plant. The issue that we run into at this point in time is Eastern Canadians kind of hear, hey, we're building an LNG project. That's where they stop. They go, okay, cool. building something. That's awesome. No matter what you say about who's funding it, who's benefiting from it, who's he's partnered with, who's actually going to be involved with it, whose money's going to go into it, they turn off immediately. Western Canadians, on the other hand, well, it does impact them because that's where it's being built. But as well as Albertans, it's like, yeah, we want to get our product to market. We're happy to have an LNG project building out in BC. That's fantastic. But right now, we also need a pipeline built so we can get to the coast, so we can start pushing our product to other markets as well. So it's kind of like a swing and a miss for Mark Carney. It's a swing and a home run with Eastern Canadians because, again, they just tune out as soon as they hear LNG project is being funded. Woohoo. That's where they leave it. But then if you're on the western side of the country, you're more interested in what's happening in the logistics of it. And that's where he fell flat right here. And this is where a lot of the question is. Like, first off, you're not using Canadian labor, not using Canadian material. You're, again, sending all this off to other markets to get it built and then brought back here. It's the Canadian way, isn't it? Offshore everything and completely sell out our people. That is the Canadian way. And the conversations are, as I said, I've really come around this whole idea of like, okay, this is one project where we're, clearly being sold out again. Once again, it's American owned. The project is American owned. A Texas-based firm bought it off of TC Energy, which is a Canadian company who divested of all their projects. I should say a lot of their projects in Canada and started expanding in the United States. And then you have the fact that we're greenlighting this. And all the material a lot of this project is not even going to be built here. Well, there's aspects of the project that could be built by Canadians. No, this is owned by Americans. This is being offshored to the likes of China and Korea, and it will be brought back here. And taxpayer money is going to fund it, or at least a chunk of it from what I'm understanding here. So while people are chewing on that, especially the fact of, we'll talk about the connections of Goldman Sachs, Donald Trump, and his right-hand guys being connected to this project. Again, as I said, go watch David's video. He breaks into all that, and it's very fascinating. We're also going to watch a quick video on at the end of this to kind of break it all down. But it is what it looks like. It's not good. But for the sake of unity of our country, again, the absence of a pipeline was very much missing from the latest announcement. We're being promised a pipeline, being told it's coming. But we know that, Brookfield's invested in pipelines in other parts of the world. So one being built in Canada, not very helpful if it's going to connect Canada to an international market, if you get what I'm saying. So pressure's being put on this current government to figure out what's going on. And quite frankly, if you understand the logistics of what's going on and happening, a pipeline isn't the focal point of all this. The focal point actually is the tanker ban, because businesses have said, we're not investing in building a pipeline in this country if we can't move the product when it gets to the end of that pipeline, i.e. getting it on tankers and shipping them across the ocean. With that tanker ban, we can't simply do that. And even the likes of Christy Clark got on CTV, who used to be a Liberal premier in BC, said, scrap the tanker ban. She said it right here on CTV. Wild.
More political capital to be expended if the Prime Minister does reach an agreement with Alberta on a potential pipeline and removal of certain climate regulations, Christy?
If the Prime Minister wants to demonstrate something to Albertans and to investors, he should get rid of the tanker ban on the North Coast, which was always just performative, silly messaging from the Trudeau government. And while Alaskans are shipping all kinds of oil right along the exact same route every day of every week. So I think that would be probably more comfort. I think that what Tony said is relevant. The financing question does matter, but when I think about that, I don't think just about government financing. I think about trying to offer comfort and security to all of the investors all around the world in China, Japan, India, South Korea that do want to invest in Canada, but have been scared away by government's failure to support projects.
But don't worry, we got Bill C-5 that allows the government to greenlight things that they feel like greenlighting. But Christy Clark, I would agree with on this one, where, yes, scrap the tanker ban. Let's restore trust in the Canadian market. It's a great idea. And get a pipeline built, for goodness sakes. But this is, again, you caught it, right? And we all know what's going on behind the scenes. Those who watch the show and those who follow politics closely, you know what's happening behind the scenes. You know how closely invested Mr. Mark Carney is in other pipeline projects around the world. It wouldn't really serve him or his buddies to have a pipeline built here in Canada. That's why they've always been squirrely. And so Tim Hodgson, the energy minister, hopped on with Vassy Kapelos again to discuss this issue. And Vassy was pressing on the idea of like, are we going to get rid of the tanker ban? Are we going to get rid of the tanker ban? And he gives a nice 3-minute fluff answer. And then we're going to pick it up at the end of this answer and watch Vassy's face.
That's a live conversation as part of the memorandum of understanding, and from what I'm hearing from Premier Smith and from the Prime Minister, we're getting very close on that.
Is the tanker ban part of the live conversation, though? That's my question.
I think we're focusing on first things first. The first thing we need to do is figure out an industrial carbon price and figure out how we get pathways built. And I'm not going to get into the details of private discussions. What has been very public is part of the discussion between the federal government and Alberta is we need to create an environment where pathways gets built as a first step. And to do that, we need clarity on an industrial carbon price so that the industry can plan how to develop their resources in an environmentally responsible way.
Oh my gosh, we have some of the cleanest energy in the world, and we're all out here talking about an industry carbon price. That's what's holding up the conversations. And it's the issue too, is pathways. We need to figure out what the pathways are before we get to the tanker ban issue. So obviously hiding from the tanker ban question is very much terrifying to this Liberal government. They don't want to even get near it. They get very squirrely anytime it gets brought up. As you saw here, Tim Hodgson give a 3-minute fluff answer, then continue to give a fluff answer after that as well. But you talk to anybody in these industries, the first thing they will bring up is, I do not care about the pipeline right now. Are you going to scrap the tanker ban? Are you going to scrap the tanker ban? We don't care about the pathways. We care about the tanker ban. And here's the government coming in, messing it all up as per usual. Well, actually, we got to think about the pathways. We got to really agree on what the industry carbon price is going to be. Here's just a simple, we don't need that. It simply just gets in the way. It's just another version of a tariff. Let's get real. Just call it what it is. It's a tax on the people here in Canada. It's a tax on our productivity. It's a tax on anything we're able to provide. Just call it what it is. Oh, we need it though for clean energy. No, Mark Carney needs it so he can get rich off of selling that idea and manipulating the market so that he and his buddies invest in projects that will gain money from the green grift. And that green grift is shown through this industry carbon tax. Simply put, as people get weird around our pipelines, people get weird around our tanker bans, it's interesting how many roadblocks get put in the way of our industry here. How many roadblocks get put in the way specifically of our oil and gas industry here in Canada from getting it to the coast, from getting it to BC, through to BC, to getting it to other markets. It's amazing how many roadblocks come up, isn't it? As I said, go watch David's video, see the connections on this current LNG project that Mark Carney's been talking about, and see how connected Donald Trump's buddies are to Mark Carney, who's also connected to this project. Just check that out. Very interesting. Because as all these roadblocks get in the way of getting a pipeline built, getting product to an international market, well, this is happening. Enbridge approves a $1.4 billion project to boost Canadian oil flows to U.S. refiners. We are continuing our utter dependence on the American market. Again, I've been on record on this show saying, yeah, we need to actually increase our trade at the U.S., but not at the expense of them being our only client, because then they just buy our valuable resource for pennies on the dollar. And that's what we're seeing again. We're expanding our trade with them in terms we're giving them more oil to their refineries so they can refine it and sell it back to us at a premium. And then we're still getting in the way of our industry being able to get our product to an international market so we can get a more competitive price on our product. Fascinating. Elbows up indeed. Canadian pipeline operator Enbridge on Friday approved a $1.4 billion expansion of its mainline and Flanagan South pipelines, adding new capacity for Canadian heavy crude into the U.S. Midwest and Gulf Coast. The project adds additional takeaway capacity for Canadian crude and broadens access to U.S. refineries, improving the flow of oil sands to major export outlets. This comes as Enbridge balanced liquids growth with its push into natural gas utilities and low-carbon fuels. Enbridge said mainline optimization phase 1 will add 150,000 barrels a day to its mainline network and 100,000 BPD to the Flanagan South pipeline, with the additional capacity expected to come online in 2027. I'm curious how this will play with the Liberal audience. As I said, they hear the idea of, oh, we're building LNG, they turn off. They'll never see these articles. They'll never, even if it's brought to their attention, they will not simply care. However, the stuff does matter to those on the West. And this is very interesting. If they keep trying to stall and cause issues with trying to get that pipeline to the coast, how much longer are people are going to take this? It's a real question. It's a real question. As I promised, though, there's a more of a left-leaning TikTok account that makes pretty hilarious videos about honest government ads, and they ended up doing one about this LNG project that was announced. And as I said, it's more of a left-wing perspective on the issue. However, see what the similarities are in terms of your concerns and how you feel about it, and just know that some of this could happen. Like, if we really have some honest conversation and get the government out of the way of our lives and them trying to divide us, like, this can actually happen. Like, this can happen. I'll show you what I mean.
Hello, I'm from the Canadian government. You can put your elbows down now, silly. We already got your vote. Introducing the Xilisms LNG Terminal, the project that sacrifices taxpayers, workers, First Nations, water, salmon, the climate, and Canadian sovereignty all in one. Xilisms. If built, Xilisms will export our fracked gas to Asia, causing more carbon emissions than coal, and Canada's energy bills to skyrocket. We saw that happen in Australia, and we can't wait to make the exact same mistake here. That's why we're blowing billions in taxpayer subsidies on it. Cause nothing says build Canada strong like a barge built in Korea with non-Canadian steel. Will it create long-term Canadian jobs? Thousands. Well, more like 200 if you read the fine print. Does it make any economic sense? Nope. The world is heading for an LNG glut and prices just went negative. So will taxpayers be left on the hook if this becomes a stranded asset? You bet. Okay, so it's a shit deal, but at least it's an Indigenous-led project. Except it's not. Xilisms is 100% American-owned by a Texas company that's financed by Wall Street firms. Firms like Blackstone, whose CEO Steve is one of Trump's top donors and closest advisors. Nothing says elbows up like giving Il Duce's inner circle control of our energy infrastructure. And Apollo, whose founder Leon gave Epstein $170 million for tax advice while chilling on East Pedo Island. Oh look, Leon even wrote Jeff a birthday poem, which reads, blonde, red, or brunette, spread out geographically. With this net of fish, Jeff's now the old man in the... Hello, I'm from the government of BC, where even if you're a pedo-loving mega shitbag, Dave says,
we welcome you.
In fact, he's so desperate, he'll even build you a new transmission line, so you can hook up Xilisms to our hydropower. Don't worry, taxpayers will pay for it. So what if BC's already running out of power and water? As fracking companies drain our aquifers during a climate drought, Dawson Creek can always drink its own tears when it runs out of water. Oh, and to carry that fracked gas to Xilisms, we'll need a new pipeline. Introducing the Prince Rupert Gas Transmission Pipeline, which, much like Coastal GasLink before it, will shit on Indigenous rights and countless salmon streams that ensure food security for people across BC. That is why the Gitxsan and Gitignan are erecting blockades, burning their benefit agreements, and telling us to edda yin from their lands. They're block yip, setting the scene for another major confrontation. But don't worry, we're ready to reconciliation them. That's why Mark's adding these projects to our fast-track list, while expanding police powers to treat land defenders as terrorists. And it's why we've hired Bechtel. You know, the guys who pushed for bombing Iraq, then got no big contracts to rebuild it. Perfect credentials for punching a pipeline through unceded Indigenous lands. Xilisms and PRGT Pipeline, bringing together MAGA oligarchs, US warmongers, and Aussie bastardry to help us fuck Canadians. Cause the only sacrifice we won't make is taxing billionaires to fix the budget deficit.
As I said, you can tell what some of the left-wing beliefs are in that video, but as I said, there's commonalities we can see that we don't agree with what's happening with this project. And I think that is something we can really try to celebrate and look for commonalities with our friends across the aisle. I will never believe and continue to vilify people and trying to dehumanize them, as some have done on that side and also some do on this side as well. We can do this. We can work together. We both disagree with corporate greed. We both disagree with the fact that Mark Carney is essentially selling out our resources. Let's continue to have those conversations. I think those would be super beneficial. And if stinking YouTube edits this stupid part out yet again, you can find the link to this in the description. In the description, not the comments, in the description. But anyways, I'll see you this afternoon. Have yourselves a good one. I'm out.